How authoritative we want to be. Test, test.
Test, test. Test, test, 1, 2, test, test. Test, test. Let's swallow this.
Testing, testing. Hey, there's voice.
Good morning. We are going to begin our class here this morning. We are so glad that you are here, and kind of an interesting format for us with kids and adults all together. But I imagine that's the way it was in the first century. And so we are back into the first century at this point. We got some cool books, notebooks for the kids. Hopefully all the kids got those. I don't know, Jody, would you like to come up and just explain this? How the books are going to work. I know there was a detailed piece in the bulletin, but also just want to explain it. Ken got one because he has already told me with the origami in there, he wants to do that while I'm talking. So,
need to have something to read while Marc is talking.
Okay, so here's the notebook. Make sure when you bring your kids, can you hold that for me? Thank you. Make sure when you bring your kids, they put their name on it because it gets added to every week. It's not a full quarter of the lessons, so they may need to put it back on the cart. The carts will always be at the back, so if you don't have your kids today, next week, look for your kids, but their name needs to go on the side here so they can grab their own. There's 2 origami sheets on this side, an easy one and a harder one. And then there's a colored pencil and a real pencil. And then inside is a place for notes if they're older kids, but there's coloring pages, there's activities, there's word searches, there's a crossword puzzle. So it's hitting all different ages. Okay? Is that it?
Thank you.
Any questions? Nope.
all right, great.
I think they did more work than we did, Marc.
They did, for sure. But it is customized to today's lesson, so that's also a great thing. If any adults would like one, just please put your name on the side of the notebook and then put it back on there. So Ken, you might want to put your name on the side.
I'm going to do it in one of those colored pencils.
That's right. So we're going to be working out of 1 Corinthians 13. We just felt that this was a good place to be for us as we begin to come back. And you know, if you think about the moment that we've been through, and let's just call it a moment within the whole scope of time, but there's certainly been an impact to the moment that we've been in. And we were curious as we started thinking about this, how do you think the pandemic has changed people? Any ideas or thoughts? If you think about society, the world, people, any changes that you think have taken place? People are more what? Depressed. All right, thank you for that, hopeful. That was good. People are more depressed. Probably very, very true. More anxiety. Randy? It's even more illustrated the need to be together. The need to be together. The need not to isolate. Isolation is not good. Man was not made to be alone. So it's very right there in Genesis 1. What else? Other things you think, how things have changed? Yeah.
People are missing the physical touch of hugs and handshakes and pats on the back.
Okay, people are missing the physical touch, the handshakes, the pats on the back, that connection.
Reactions are all over the map. You just don't know how people are going to react. I mean, they're more cautious, less cautious.
Yeah. So, people are changed. They're less cautious. They're more cautious. They're all over the board. You don't really know how you might approach somebody. Richard?
I think within the family, bonds are much stronger.
Yeah. So bonds are strong. We've spent more time simplifying, perhaps, and getting rid of some of the things that kind of made our worlds whirl around a little bit. So families have gotten closer. Yeah. Did I see another hand back this way? Yeah.
People are more scared.
People are more scared. Absolutely. They're more scared. Other thoughts? Yes.
Children have impacted significantly.
Yeah. Children have been impacted significantly. And that's probably the biggest impact. It's the lost year. The lost 15 months in some cases. Some kids have been able to plug back in. because perhaps they've been in the schooling situations that have allowed it, even here in the state, but also around the country, other places, but kids have been impacted. Moments have been taken from them. Parents have been impacted from that too, because they've had to all of a sudden figure out how I'm going to teach my kid, and they may not have been great at that before. And so they had to then flex new skills and in a lot of cases figure out how to work at the same time. Anything else? Yes?
I think it's caused fissures in relationships because people do respond differently, and some felt so much anxiety that it just caused divisions.
Okay, so it's caused division, fissures in relationships. Absolutely. It's been a new experience. I know I have several people that I've talked with who have had, they've had babies, and then I would be talking with them and welcoming them back into the office virtually, and they would tell me that their parents, both sides, had not seen the grandchild yet, and the grandchild was 6 months old in some cases. And so that's different, right? So there's a lot more cautious, and it creates this uncertainty even among family members and the fissures that exist between family.
Okay. So I think these have all been great.
Yeah.
Let's move on to talk about, and we might want to hear from some of the kids too, how has the pandemic changed your life personally? There it is. Yeah. So we talked about the big picture. How has it affected your personal life?
Given me more time at home.
Okay, Kitty and a lot of us have gotten to spend a lot of, more time at home.
Which I appreciate.
Okay, there's good of that. Yes.
For us, we've been able, with the slow schedule, to focus on priorities and being able to do daily Bible studies at home, which had kind of always we wanted to, but didn't necessarily find.
Okay, a change in priorities, more time to focus on what's really important. In your case, you've done more Bible study. And by the way, I want to say we appreciate everyone for speaking up. We'll try to repeat your comments so it'll get into the microphone, but thank you for speaking up so that everyone here, we do appreciate that. Okay, how's your life been different?
Judy Hines.
Sorry, who?
Judy?
Oh, Judy. Not
Or
Judy.
not Joy.
Helen.
Helen, sorry.
I read a quote by Anne Wolfgang, and she said, "It slows life gloriously."
Slows life gloriously.
I like that.
That's good. That's worth, thank you for sharing that. Okay. How about someone on this side of the room? Has your life been the same or have some changes come about? Dennis and Carolyn.
Virtual meetings are not the same.
Virtual meetings are not the same. Yes, Carolyn?
We have walked because at the beginning there wasn't anywhere else to go, but we would walk in our neighborhood, and we've gotten to know neighbors 3-4 blocks away that we stand and have long conversations with, and it's been a very positive thing.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Do we have any of the kids whose life has been different? I haven't. What's school like? School hasn't been the same, has it?
They said they have to wear masks.
More math.
More masks. Yeah.
Oh, masks. Masks. Okay.
Yeah, you have to wear masks.
Probably the same amount of math.
No.
A lot more masks. Okay. So thank you for that. Because there has been so much change, Marc and I, when we were thinking about this and we looked at our lives, how things had changed, and we both took different paths to choosing this text for our study. The reason that I wanted to study 1 Corinthians is that this whole pandemic is really my fault. I think a lot of you know that I spent a lot of time in the hospital in weeks on end, and all I wanted was to go and spend time at home. So my prayers have been answered. Anyway, I'm sorry about that if what I wanted has inconvenienced you in any way. But I had the time that I was there, I couldn't focus very well. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't read more than 5 minutes at a time. But I did read, and I picked up my Bible and read, and I found myself reading the same thing over and over again. Now you might think, well, I was reading the laments because I was so sick and in so much pain, or I was reading the Psalms and people searching, and I did do that some. But more than anything else, I found myself reading 1 Corinthians 13. Because I found that I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. I couldn't be part of our mission team report of the trip we had made to Mexico. I had promised Marshall Henry that I would wash the windows of the church building. I even had my jug of Windex and my squeegee and my bucket, but I never got around to that. I couldn't teach with Marc or coordinate this ministry. And thanks for carrying on, by the way. Probably went better when I was out of pocket. But anyway, I couldn't do any of those things, and I wanted it. Does this mean I can't serve the Lord? Is there anything that I can do? Is there anything that I should do? And I kept turning to these words over and over again. And it really was a change for me, a change of perspective. And so that's why I chose 1 Corinthians 13.
Yeah, I got there a different path, and I didn't ask for this to happen to any of us, so we'll leave that with
It's not your fault, huh?
I'm off the hook. But back last spring, I was thinking a lot about just moments of confusion, moments where there's fog, and I was wondering if there was anything in the Bible about fog and about things not being clear. And so I was searching and looking through, and we'll cover this here a little bit towards the end today, but I was drawn to the Message version of verse 12, and it uses that we are looking through a fog. And I thought that's very interesting. And you may know other versions that talk about things being blurry or we're not able to quite see, but it will become clear someday. But it's not always clear. But yet I wanted everything to always be clear to me, and maybe you can share that same perspective. As we want to understand the moment, we want to be able to understand exactly what's happening and why it's happening at all times. But even the Bible tells us that's not possible. But what was fascinating to me is that as I looked into this, there was this element of love that jumped out. And it was very surprising to me that love was the way through the confusion, that love was the piece that resonated, that Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 13. So it was fascinating when Ken and I started talking about what we might launch when we get back into teaching in person. We both came at this different ways, but we both resonated on this topic of love in 1 Corinthians 13. So it was very fascinating to us that God worked us separately to arrive here at this spot for this particular moment. And then just a quick mention, as we had decided we were going to call it Extravagant Love and Loving Extravagantly. And so we were looking for a template for that, and then we found this template that we're using out of a church in North Carolina that they had built a series around this, and a series where you can see there, loving your neighbor, love your community, and love the world. And that's a lot what Paul is saying here in 1 Corinthians 13, is think more global. And then he starts in here in the first several verses of verses 1 through 3, and we've entitled today's discussion, Clang, Clang, Clang. And if you know the verses, you know exactly why. But the real point is, how do we begin to change the sound of our lives or to shift the sound of our lives? What does our life sound like to the people around us? Does it sound like clang, clang, clang and really noisy, or does it sound peaceful and inspiring and helpful and loving?
That's a good question.
Yeah. And when you go to the next piece here, just look at the setting, and then we'll look at the verses here. But the setting of 1 Corinthians 13, and a lot of all of 1 Corinthians, of course, for Paul, and this is from Wearsby, but what we see is that there was a lot of conflict amongst the body. So the body was having conflict. The people in this church had gifts, and then they were competing with each other over the gifts. As my gift is better than your gift, and you and I have the same gift, but I'm actually better at my gift than you are with the same gift. So there was this real competition going on. There was this abuse of gift of tongues, so there was division. There was envying. It was like, oh man, I've got this gift, but I really like your gift better, and I really would prefer to have your gift than my gift. So I'm going to try to do that instead of doing the gift that God has given me. And then people became selfish, and they became critical of each other. And what's fascinating about that is we hear that, and we think, yeah, that happens in the world all the time, but this happened within the church. And so Paul writes into this moment and says, you've got to be more patient with each other. You've got to be more loving to each other. You have to have a higher regard. And if you don't understand how heavy and how deep and big love is in the priority, then you're missing the point.
That's right. So, I was thinking, Mark, when you were talking about that the last time that we taught together, we taught a class on the Pharisees, and we were making fun of competition in the church.
Yeah, absolutely.
You remember that we were, he was dressing up with a big phylactery, and I was with a long prayer shawl, and hopefully we were just doing that in fun. We weren't really competing with each other. We wouldn't do that, would we?
No, but I remember your shawl being better than what I was doing.
Yeah. So Paul said at the end of chapter 12 that, you've got all this competitive spirit. You've got these divisions, and I want to show you a better way, the most excellent way. And so the Bible says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. So he said, it's just a bunch of noise if you don't have love. So let's talk about some noise. Kids first, do we have anyone here who knows how to make irritating noise? Yeah? Back here? Can we hear? Okay. Couldn't quite hear how oh, there we go. That's pretty irritating. Can you do that one more time? That's good. What's your name?
Henry.
Henry, yeah. You can do that again in the car on the way home. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so there's some irritating noise, and I brought a couple of pans here. Do we have any volunteers to see what kind of noise you can make with these? If we can do Henry again. Oh, here we go. Yeah, here you go. Take that, and then that. And what do you do with those? That's pretty good. Okay, thank you. I think I better take those. Oh, she wants to do it too? After class. Okay, so So if I don't have love, what is the sound of my life? It's clang, clang, clang. It's a cymbal. It's Henry at his best, or worse, depending on how you. Thank you so much for your cooperation there, kids. And you and we came up with some annoying sounds. Marc, oops, I went too far. There we are. Do you remember that? When we were doing this, I put together, or I found a YouTube video of scratching fingers on a board, and it was 30 seconds of fingernails on a board that I made Marc listen to. But he wouldn't let me play it because he said that everybody would walk out.
I took it out. I did the final edit.
So it was pretty irritating. So you picked the dental drill as something that's pretty irritating.
Yeah, it's not a peaceful sound. Not an encouraging sound.
You see the clanging gong there, and rooster in the morning. If your neighbor has one of those, you know how irritating that can be. And the vuvuzela.
Yeah, that's that horn. That people that love soccer love that horn. Not at all, right? But if you ever watch soccer on TV, that's all you can hear because they can't edit it out. They can't get it out. So you hear this constant in the background, and I just find it so irritating myself. But it's just kind of one of those things. So when I thought of irritating noises, it was like, yeah, that's one of those for me.
Yeah. So we've spent some time on this, some really important class time on this, and there's a point. Keep these irritating sounds in mind. You know, hopefully you won't take them home with you, but keep in mind because we're going to get back to this.
So if you look at the list there in verses 1 through 3, and you see this list of talents and blessings and just gifts that these folks had. They were able to speak in the tongues of men and of angels. They had prophetic powers. They could understand all mysteries. I would love that, to understand all mysteries. To have all knowledge, to move mountains, that would be awesome. Just to say, Hood, I think you're a little off. I'd like you over here. Right? To give away all you have and to be persecuted and burned for God. And you look at that list and that is a powerful, powerful list. So to the people reading this, what do you think would be most surprising to them when they're reading this list and reading this list of gifts that they have and talents? What's that? Yeah, to be persecuted and burned for God? It's not something you want to do. Yeah. But if you're doing all these things, what is Paul saying? You're doing these things or you have these skills, but what? You don't have love. These things are worth. So why would that be surprising to these people?
Well, Marc, I thought that doing stuff, getting things done for God is what church is all about.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to have love as long as you did some of these things, right?
Isn't that why we're here? So that we can do.
Don't you think that'd be surprising to the people reading this? And isn't it sometimes surprising to us? When you think about, wow, you're kidding me. I mean, you have all these great talents and skills and you're involved and you have gifts. But if I don't love people.
What do you preach to thousands of people?
Yeah.
It seems like that's pretty good list, pretty committed people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, I think that people would have been really shocked about this. Again, realize that they're arguing with each other, they're in contention with each other. And this is what starts to make us squirm a little bit. It makes me squirm because I don't love people the way I need to. But I find credibility in the things I do for God. And I think that overcomes that. And so maybe I can treat someone poorly that I encounter, but as long as I come in and study and teach, maybe that is a counterweight. But Paul actually has a different message for me, which I have to stand up and look at and take into my life. He says to have those gifts and be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal, to be nothing and to have gained nothing, all because you do not love. And that is, to me, the uncomfortable part about this message from Paul. is that is the biggest thing we should work on, is what Paul is saying. I don't think I'm saying that. Paul comes out and says this very clearly, that we have to be thinking more and more about love, not less and less about how to use our gifts and talents, but understand that loving each other and caring for each other, and not just within the body, but within the entire community and world, that becomes the difference maker in life. And so to me, that had to have been greatly surprising, greatly irritating to these people in the first century. Yeah. And the greatest of these is love. So this is the last part of the passage. So if you look at the 1 through 3, keep that in mind. We're bookending this today and going to verses 12 through 13 to look at that piece. And we're really just kind of laying the framework here. Then we're going to go through week by week and look at some of these different attributes. Ken?
Okay. So that's the first commercial for next week. We'll have another one at the end. So the Bible says, and this is the Message, verse 12, we don't yet see things clearly. We're squinting in a fog, peering through a mist. So in this text, especially in verse 10, I know in a lot of scholars have debated about there is when perfection comes, or that which is perfect, and what that means. Some think it's the canon, the completed inspired books of the New Testament. Some think it's heaven. Some think it's the second returning of Jesus Christ. And there's a lot of discussion about that. But the point is, it's something that the church in Corinth did not have. They did not have the perfection yet. And so the point here is they were in the fog. They were in a mist. They were peering. So if I close my eyes and walk around, what's going to happen? I'm going to stumble. I'm going to bump into Marc. I'm going to knock over the podium. So I better open my eyes because I can't see. I don't know where I'm going. So the Greek word here is enigma, which means obscurely or dimly or darkly. So fall and winter's coming, so this is a great picture that Marc picked out. We've all experienced the fog and know what it's like. And that's what it was like for the church in Corinth. They didn't know where they were going. They didn't see the way clearly through the future. Does that have any relevance for us today? Yeah. And, I was thinking, Marc, if we're living in fog, it seems like what you need more than anything else is faith. Because, that'll give you the big picture. Or what you need more than anything else is hope. Because, things are going to be clearer in the future. God will make it clearer in the future. And so it seems like when you're in a fog, what you need most is faith and hope. And I'm setting you up here in just a little bit for an answer. But we're living in an obscure time. I already talked about that. That's still, nothing has changed for us. But let's remember, even though we're in a fog, just like the church in Corinth was, God never really intended for his people to, quote, get it. At some point, he will make it all clear.
So verse 13, and I'm preluding this here, and since we live in a fog, the things that last and do forever are faith, hope, and love. Those are the pieces that live forever. And if you look at verse 13, I'm going to use the voice version here on the next slide. It's around this concept of love being weightier, but now faith, hope, and love remain. These three virtues must characterize our lives. The greatest of these is love. A lot of other versions talk about how these are all eternal lasting. But if you think about the faith component, you see what faith means in the Greek. Faith is a conviction in truth, or the conviction of truth, the truth that God has shared. And then the next one, hope, is the joyful and confident expectation for eternity. And so if you think about both faith and hope, when Christ comes, those pieces will have been fulfilled. The love piece is the one that lasts throughout time, and that is the piece that sticks, and I think why Paul says the greatest of these is love. And then the final word, that love there that's used in Greek, is affection and goodwill and benevolence. When you hear the word love, though, oftentimes what do you think of when you hear the word love? Romantic love. That's right, romantic love. That's the first thing we tend to think about, but love has a lot of different dimensions to it. And in this, Paul is talking about the affection for one another, showing goodwill. I like that word of goodwill, extending goodwill to someone that we encounter, and being benevolent, that when we do something for someone, when we give to them, when we're kind to them, when we share our lunch with them at school, when we find ways to lift someone up who's really upset, and they come through a hard day or a hard moment, those show love, those show benevolence and care, and that's the word that he uses here. And so the chapter proof point, essentially, of all of 13 is that love matters, and love matters greatly. And I think as we talked, it begins to take us into a conversation around love that still can be a little uncomfortable.
So if I understand what you're saying, Mark, love matters more than doing things for God.
Yep.
Love matters more even than our faith. Yeah. Love matters more than hope.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's important.
It's important.
Okay. Thank you. And yet, there's a danger here. We've said love is important. We've done this class. And isn't there a feeling that, well, everybody knows that? I've got that. You know, everybody knows that love's important. Everybody knows that love is important. So we've got that. Let's check that off. And let's move on to deeper matters. Let's move on to, we hate to say more important matters, but other matters. And we were talking during our class prep that preachers who preach about love, you know, how are they considered? Don't we say, well, you know, they're kind of shallow, not very deep? And so I wanted us to talk about this just a little bit. Why do you think that is? Why might we give ourselves a pass when we talk about love? Say, yeah, we've got this. You know, everybody knows this. We've handled this, and let's move on. Or why might it can be considered a shallow topic in Christianity? We want to hear your thoughts. Helen?
The world also talks about love a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't quite
The
hear.
world also talks about love.
Oh, because the world talks about love a lot?
A lot.
Okay. We want to talk about that in this class, what the world says about love. Romance and sex isn't, there's some overlap there about true biblical love, but there's a lot of difference too. Okay, why else might this be considered passé? Okay, because we were a believer. Okay, thank you. Can you elaborate just a little bit more on that, what you mean? Okay, because we believe, we just assume that comes with it. Yes, Dave?
I think the reason that it's passé in Christianity partly is because true love takes away from the importance of a person and the spotlight that is shown on them for their wonderful actions, their wonderful ability to speak, their wonderful abilities, and focuses on the actual love that a person has for someone. So it actually removes the importance of the person doing the loving.
So it takes the spotlight off of ourselves and puts it on someone else. I didn't repeat what you said for the mic like I said I would, but thank you. Very, very interesting. Shannon.
I think there are some Christians who've talked about love in the church who misdefine love biblically. I think they separate love and truth as if they're in competition, but in the Bible, Jesus says, if you love me, you'll obey my commands, and they're not two different things. So I don't think anyone needs love as passe, but I think sometimes the message isn't communicated completely, and so it makes Christians cringe. You know, that when you say love, what you're saying is we don't need to teach truth, and that's a scary thing.
That is scary. Okay, so Shannon's point was that sometimes love and truth are seen as in competition, and so if Marc talks about love, then I might say, well, brother, are you saying that truth isn't important? And that's not what he's been saying at all. And so, because we're here because we believe that truth is important and truth matters. But we're also saying that love matters, and so thank you. That's a very perceptive comment. They are not in competition, but they fit together because God is love and God is truth. They're both reflected in the nature of God. Yes.
Notice in the English language it's such an imprecise word. You know, I love my shoes, I love my husband, I love God. Like, are those all the same kind of love?
I love my shoes, I love my husband, I love God. Hopefully not in that order. We do use different, we do use, it's very imprecise.
Maybe that was the right order.
Thanks for being good sports. Okay, so very, very interesting here. Are we ready to ask another question? So let's just, I don't want you to hear, because we're talking about love, that we think that truth is unimportant. Because we're not saying that at all. We're just saying that love needs to be a priority in the heart of a Christian. And when we think about the sound of our lives, I look at my life, it hasn't always been that way.
And hopefully there's agreement. And as you think about yourself, I don't think any of us necessarily are saying, check the box, I've got it. I love perfectly. I love the way Christ loves. And so that's the aspirational point for us, is to grow into a better love for each other, a better love for the people and the situations that we run across every single day. And that is tough to react well in the moment. Wendy? Right.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
You want to call me on my behavior by preaching about it or teaching about it. I don't want you, that's too much for me, so I just don't want you to teach about it.
I think that's a great point, Wendy. So, we don't oftentimes want it taught because we don't want to feel like it's being judged. So don't you tell me how to love, and don't you tell me that I don't love. And even in that reply back, you hear something, right? That's not quite maybe embracing or loving. But how do we begin to change? If you agree with me that, we need to sort of shift the way our life sounds. We need to shift the way we react to people and that we reach out to people. How do we begin to change that? What are some ideas?
I do agree with you, by the way.
What's that?
I do agree with you, by the way.
Okay, thank you.
But they're going to have to come up with the answer.
Yeah. But how might we change the sound of our lives? Yes.
Well, there's a big difference between knowing that love is important and doing it.
And doing it, yeah. Big difference between knowing and doing it.
I think you have to be very intentional. There's opportunities that arise periodically where someone needs help, needs support, needs to be cared for, prayed for, or whatever. And it's going to be very uncomfortable for us to step into that. And we
So sometimes we run into situations, opportunities, people that need help, and we go by that. We don't see it. But being more aware of that, being aware of the things in front of us that come across our path so that we can react in love. Okay? Yes, Jerry.
I agree with what Greg was saying about we don't see it in action enough, and that might be why talking about love is passe, because there's a lot of talk sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you look at how Christ expressed love, it was by going out of his way to meet with someone who was totally unlovable. The woman at the well, the demon-possessed man. That's love. Where it's radical love, and that's the kind of love we need to adopt and we need to hear about.
So Christ demonstrated that in his own life as he walked, that he had love for folks that others would have said, wait a second, why are you even extending any kind of courtesy to that person? Wendy?
Love takes time.
Yeah, love takes time.
And I think sometimes we can say simple, love you, I'll pray about that, but real love takes investment in the person. And sometimes we just don't either number one, have the patience to do that, or number two, understand how much work that might be.
Okay, so we need to put a lot of work into it, and we need to also be able to have time to react and take the time to react. Dennis?
Love is a feeling, but also love is a commitment. Feelings change, but commitment is something from the heart, and that is there no matter what is going on.
So that's a great illustration, I think, of for us is sometimes you say love is a feeling, but love is also a commitment. It's a deep commitment. So as we live our lives, if we come back to this threshold or this measurement, that wait a second, I've got to be deeply convicted and committed that I'm going to love. And that can sometimes maybe help us correct ourselves. I think we can also correct ourselves mid-course, as if we start talking with someone or interact with someone, I think we can back up and say, wait a second, that wasn't really loving. Let me kind of come around another way and say that again. So we can sometimes just reverse ourselves, but we're going to have to catch ourselves. Christ didn't have to catch himself because he had perfect love and perfect reaction every single time. But I think sometimes we need to pause more and take a pivot and reflect and then come at it a different way. Ken?
Love also gets messy.
Love gets messy. How?
Just when you start investing in people and loving on them, and they open up to you, and their lives are messy, your life is messy. Yeah, it's easy to love on the surface and just try to do a good thing and check it off and be like, yeah, I was loving. But real love really goes deep in.
Yeah.
And we're all imperfect.
I love that image of that was really loving of me. I love how I just did that. But love makes us vulnerable because we have to open up ourselves, and then we also see into someone else. And life, you're saying people are messy, and life is messy. Kathy, you had something?
Well, we're talking bigger picture here about loving
Yeah.
in big ways, but there's the everyday living
Yep.
that we need to do and be committed to, and patience and not getting angry and not keeping offenses and not saying, I'm tired of this or whatever, but we need to have a love that transcends everyday irritation.
A love that transcends everyday irritations. Yes, and love, there's a lot more to love, and I think Paul knew that as well, which is why he didn't just use these first 3 verses, these last 2 verses, and call it a day. He's got a lot of stuff in there that I think is going to challenge us as we go forward. One more comment, and then we'll land this class for the day. Judy?
The time-consuming part of it. There's only so much time, and when you start investing in people, it's a time sink, and you're trying to balance your love for taking care of your family and your responsibilities in life, and then all of a sudden, you invest in somebody. It's hard just to balance the time issues.
Yeah, it's difficult to balance when we love. Difficult to...
You spend time here, and therefore you're not loving people in your life every day because you don't have time to take care of them.
So how do you prioritize the love? And how do you ensure the people around you love you and your situation too. Not that we can control that, but there's a grace that goes with that. It's just like, look, go do those things because they're important. And I think that's one of the contemplations, and I'll give it back to Ken, for us, is as we stack life back in. Someone said early on that we freed up some time, we got rid of some things. Let's not put everything back in that we were doing so that we have time to do more for God, time to love more, time to react more. And that's my biggest fear. And I hear people say, I just can't wait to get back. That worries me because people were overscheduled and just did not have any margin in their lives. We've got to somehow figure out how not to stack it all back up and say, that's how I want it. We've got to leave room and space for God to work in our lives and bless other people.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your very perceptive comments. So there is a few blocks from my house, a church. They've got a sign out like we do, and a lot of times they put on left-wing political slogans that I don't think are appropriate. Sometimes they put on things that I love, and sometimes just something that makes me think. And this caught my eye. It was on their sign a couple of weeks ago. If your religion doesn't teach you to love, become an atheist. And at first I hated that. And then I thought, well, I kind of like that. And now I'm not sure. But anyway, something to think about. I don't think that becoming an atheist will help you become more loving. So I don't recommend that approach. But I do think it's worth thinking for us as Christians to seriously consider, as Marc was saying, what do our lives sound like in the ears of God? What do our lives sound like in the ears of our family? What do our lives sound like in the ears of our Christian brothers and sisters? And what do our lives sound like in the ears of our community? Let's think about that. So next week, come back. I'm going to talk about one of my least favorite stories in the world, and we'll study Love is Patient. Thanks so much for your participation.
Let's close with a prayer, and then we'll be done. Remember to take those books back and put your names on the side, but let's close in prayer. Almighty God, we are so thankful for this time just simply to be together and share in dialogue about Paul's words here in 1 Corinthians 13. And let us not brush them off as I've got that, because it is challenging to me. I think it's challenging to a lot of other folks as well, is to realize that in our lives and the way we live our lives, the way you bless us so much, that if we don't have love, it sounds like clanging, or it sounds like some of these other sounds that we heard from the kids that are made. And it's troubling to us, God, to sometimes feel like, or to understand, or to have this impression that maybe I need to love more in addition to doing the things that I'm doing. So God, please help us to love more. Help us to see the importance. Help this study to bless each of us and to give us time to not reflect in a defensive way, but to be open to consider the possibility of understanding how to love better, and for next week, how to be patient in the way that we love others. We thank you for this time and for this day. In Christ's name, amen.
May God bless you.